Dr. Elena Reyes gripped the steering wheel of her weathered pickup truck, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The dashboard clock glowed 11:47 p.m. as she navigated the Serpentine Mountain Road, cutting through Montana's wilderness. 14 hours at the clinic had left her bones aching and her mind fogged with exhaustion, but the caffeine she'd downed kept her alert enough to navigate the treacherous curves. Light snow had begun falling an hour ago, dusting the asphalt with a treacherous glaze that caught the moonlight. The pine trees loomed on either side like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with the promise of winter. Elena's thoughts drifted to the hot shower and warm bed waiting at the cabin she shared with Abuela Rosa. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Then her headlights swept across something that made her heart stop. A luxury SUV lay crumpled against the guardrail, its front end accordioned around a boulder. Flames licked up from beneath the hood, growing hungrier by the second. Black smoke billowed into the night sky, disappearing into the darkness above the tree line. Elena's medical training overrode every instinct screaming at her to drive past. She slammed the brakes, her truck skidding slightly on the icy shoulder before lurching to a stop. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her phone. No service. The screen mocked her with its empty signal bars. This stretch of mountain road was notorious for dead zones. Damn it, she whispered. Already reaching for the first aid kit she kept in her glove compartment. The heat hit her before she'd covered half the distance to the wreck. Sparks hissed and popped, and the acrid stench of burning rubber and gasoline stung her nostrils. Through the shattered windshield, she could make out a figure slumped against the deployed airbag. "Sir, can you hear me?" Elena shouted, her voice nearly swallowed by the roar of flames. No response. She tried the driver's door, jammed solid. Racing to the passenger side, she yanked the handle. This one gave with a metallic groan. The interior was a chaos of broken glass, twisted metal, and the man's labored breathing. Elena squeezed through the opening, the heat scorching her exposed skin. She found the seatbelt release and pressed it. The buckle clicked free, but the man's dead weight made moving him nearly impossible. The cabin door burst open, and Abuela Rosa looked up from her evening tea, her weathered hands freezing mid-motion. Elena staggered through the doorway, half dragging, half carrying an unconscious man whose expensive suit was torn and bloodied. "Madre de Dios, Elena, what have you done?" Rosa's voice carried equal parts shock and accusation. "Help me get him to the couch," Elena gasped, her muscles screaming in protest. Together they lowered the stranger onto the worn sofa near the fireplace. Elena immediately began her assessment, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency despite her exhaustion. "You should have called the police." "The hospital," Rosa said, but she was already fetching clean towels and boiling water without being asked. Years of necessity had made her Elena's unofficial medical assistant. No service on the mountain. The road's already getting bad with the snow. Elena cut away the man's shirt, revealing deep bruising across his ribs and a gash on his temple that would need stitches. He wouldn't have survived the weight. Rosa muttered something in Spanish that Elena chose to ignore. The old woman disappeared into her herb pantry, returning with dried plants Elena couldn't name but had learned to trust over the years. For the next 48 hours, the world outside ceased to exist. The snowstorm Rosa had predicted intensified into a full blizzard, burying the mountain pass under 3 feet of powder. The cabin became an island, cut off from everything beyond its wooden walls. Elena worked with single-minded focus. She stitched the head wound by firelight when the power flickered and died. She bound his ribs with careful precision, monitoring for signs of internal bleeding. His breathing remained shallow but steady. The expensive watch on his wrist, engraved with initials she couldn't quite make out in the dim light, suggested wealth, but his haunted, fevered mutterings suggested something far more dangerous. "Damien, the board, they'll find me," he whispered during moments of semi-consciousness, his voice rough and urgent. "You're safe," Elena murmured, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. "Rest." On the third morning, as weak sunlight filtered through frost-covered windows, his eyes finally opened. They were gray, she noticed, the color of storm clouds, and surprisingly alert despite his ordeal. "Where?" His voice cracked. He tried to sit up and immediately winced, clutching his bandaged ribs. Don't move. You have 3 cracked ribs and a concussion. Elena's hand on his shoulder was gentle but firm. I'm Dr. Elena Reyes. You were in an accident on the mountain road. I pulled you out before your vehicle exploded. The storm finally broke on the 5th day, leaving the world crystallized in ice and silence. Elena needed supplies, medical gauze, antibiotics, food, and despite Rose's warnings, she couldn't put off a trip to town any longer. The moment she walked into Martinez's general store, Elena felt the weight of eyes on her. Conversations stuttered to awkward pauses. Old Joe Martinez, who'd known her since she was in diapers, gave her a look that mixed curiosity with something darker. "Morning, Dr. Reyes," he said slowly, ringing up her purchases with unusual deliberation. "Heard you had some excitement up on the mountain road the other night." Elena kept her expression neutral. "Just a long shift at the clinic, Joe. Same as always." "Funny thing." Joe leaned across the counter conspiratorially. "Bobby Hernandez swears he saw your truck racing away from some kind of fire up there. Said it looked like a vehicle accident. But when the sheriff's boys checked it out the next day, they didn't find no bodies. Just burnt metal. Must have been seeing things," Elena said, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You know how dark it gets up there." She escaped the store with her supplies, but the damage was done. As she loaded bags into her truck, she caught snippets of conversation from a group of women near the coffee shop. "Hiding something. Always was too proud. Thinks she's better than us." At the clinic, things got worse. Dr. Marissa Chun cornered her in the supply room, her expression a careful mask of concern. "Elena, people are talking." Marissa's voice was soft, almost syrupy. "They say you might be involved in something irregular. I'm worried about you." "There's nothing to worry about," Elena said, forcing a smile. "You know how this town is. Someone sneezes wrong, and suddenly it's a scandal." Marissa's eyes narrowed slightly. "If you're in some kind of trouble, you can tell me. We're friends, right?" The word friends hung in the air, and for the first time, Elena heard the hollowness in it. That evening, Sheriff Tom Hawkins's cruiser crunched up the gravel drive to the cabin. Elena watched from the window as he climbed out, adjusting his hat, a gesture she recognized from childhood as his way of preparing for difficult conversations. "Sheriff," she said, opening the door before he could knock. "Elena." Tom's weathered face was troubled. "Mind if I ask you a few questions?" "Of course not." She stepped onto the porch, pulling the door closed behind her, keeping him outside, away from the man recovering in her living room. Elena stood at the fireplace, hanging Ethan's torn jacket to dry, when the folded newspaper clipping slipped from the inner lining and fluttered to the floor. Her breath caught as she bent to retrieve it, and the headline screamed up at her in bold black letters. Tech billionaire Ethan Blake missing after embezzlement scandal. The photograph beneath showed a man in an impeccably tailored suit, his gray eyes confident and commanding. The same man now sleeping on her couch, bruised and broken. Beside him in the photo stood another man, slightly younger, with the same sharp features but a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The caption identified him as Damian Blake, younger brother and interim CEO of Blake Technologies. Elena's hands trembled as she read. Allegations of embezzled funds. A board vote stripping him of power. Speculation about whether he'd fled the country to avoid prosecution. The article painted Ethan Blake as a ruthless tech mogul who'd betrayed investors and employees alike, stealing millions before disappearing into the night. She looked from the newspaper to the man on her couch. The same angular jaw, the same storm-gray eyes. But the man in the photograph radiated power and privilege. The man she'd pulled from burning wreckage looked hunted. "You found it." Elena spun around. Ethan was awake, propped against the armrest, his gaze fixed on the clipping in her hands. His voice was quiet, resigned. "You're Ethan Blake." It wasn't a question. "I am." The cabin suddenly felt too small. Elena's mind raced through the implications, the national manhunt, the accusations, the fact that she'd been harboring one of the most wanted men in America. The embezzlement is a lie. Ethan's jaw tightened. Carefully constructed, meticulously documented, but a lie nonetheless. "Everyone is looking for you." "I know." Elena sank into Rose's chair, the newspaper crumpling in her grip. "Then tell me. Tell me everything, or I swear I'll drive you to Sheriff Hawkins myself." Ethan was silent for a long moment, his fingers absently tracing the bandages on his ribs. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of exhaustion and betrayal. My brother and I built Blake Technologies from nothing. After our parents died in a plane crash, it was all we had, each other and a dream. We were partners, best friends. He paused, pain flickering across his face. But success changed Damien. He wanted to expand faster, take bigger risks, cut corners I wasn't willing to cut. When I refused to compromise our ethics for profit, in the days following Ethan's confession, something shifted in the cabin's atmosphere. The revelation of his identity should have created distance, but instead it forged an unexpected intimacy. Elena had made her choice, she believed him, and that decision bound them together in ways neither had anticipated. Ethan's strength gradually returned, though he still moved carefully, mindful of his healing ribs. Elena found herself teaching him small tasks around the cabin. How to chop vegetables for Rosa's pozole, how to stack firewood in the way that would dry it fastest, how to coax the ancient radio into receiving signals through the mountain interference. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Their hands brushed during these mundane activities. When he passed her a knife, when they reached for the same log, when she adjusted the bandages on his temple. Each touch carried an electric current neither acknowledged, but both felt. One evening, as the sun painted the snow-covered peaks in shades of amber and rose, the old radio crackled to life with a song from decades past. The melody was slow and melancholic, the kind that made the air feel thick with unspoken words. Ethan, who'd been staring into the fire, suddenly stood and extended his hand toward Elena. "Dance with me. You shouldn't, your ribs. Then hold me up." His gray eyes held a challenge and a plea. Elena rose slowly, her heart hammering as she placed her hand in his. His arms circled her waist, pulling her close but careful. They swayed in the small space between the fireplace and Rosa's rocking chair, moving to a rhythm older than the song itself. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and Rosa's herbal tea. Beyond the frosted windows, the world was silent and white. But in this moment, nothing existed except the warmth of his hand on her back, the steadiness of his heartbeat beneath her palm, the way his breath stirred her hair. Elena looked up and found him already watching her, his expression unguarded in a way she'd never seen. The distance between them narrowed. A breath, then less than a breath. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, see the way his lips parted slightly. Time suspended. Her heart thundered so loudly she was certain he could hear it. His hand tightened on her waist, pulling her incrementally closer. She rose on her toes without thinking, drawn like iron to a magnet. Then reality crashed back. Elena jerked away, her cheeks flushing. "I can't. You're my patient. I can't." Dr. Marissa Chin sat in the corner booth of the coffee shop on Main Street, her fingers wrapped around a ceramic mug that had long since gone cold. She'd been waiting 15 minutes when the man finally arrived, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her monthly salary. Dr. Chun. His voice was smooth, professional. He slid into the booth across from her with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. "I'm Marcus Stone. Thank you for agreeing to meet." Marissa's stomach twisted with guilt and anticipation. "You said you had information about a dangerous fugitive." "I did." Marcus placed a photograph on the table between them. It showed Ethan Blake, younger, healthier, standing beside a gleaming skyscraper. "This man is wanted for embezzlement and fraud. We have reason to believe he's being harbored in this area by someone in the medical community." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Marissa thought of Elena's distraction at the clinic, her defensive responses, the way she'd been avoiding eye contact for days. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. "If Elena is involved with this man," Marcus continued, his pale eyes never leaving Marissa's face, "she's not just risking her career. She's obstructing justice, aiding a criminal. She could lose everything." He paused, letting that sink in. "Unless someone who cares about her, someone who understands the medical community, helps us resolve this situation quickly and quietly." Marissa heard the unspoken promise beneath his words. "Help us, and when Elena falls, you'll be there to catch her patients. Her practice, her reputation. I want to help Elena," Marissa said slowly, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue. "If she's in trouble, she needs friends to guide her back to the right path." Marcus smiled. "Then tell me what you know." That night, as darkness settled over the valley, Elena stood at the cabin window and watched headlights move slowly along the access road below. They didn't belong to any vehicle she recognized, sleek, expensive SUVs that had no business on these mountain roads. Ethan. Her voice was tight. We have company. He crossed to the window in 3 strides, his body tensing as he recognized the vehicles. Damien's men. They found us. Rosa emerged from her bedroom, already dressed despite the late hour. The old woman's instincts had always been sharp. How long do we have? Not long. Ethan turned to Elena, his face grave. You need to turn me in. Tell them I forced you to help me, that you were afraid. Absolutely not. Elena, they'll destroy you. They're already trying. She grabbed her medical bag from the hall closet, her movements sharp with barely controlled fear. We leave tonight. Together. The knock on the door came at dawn. Sheriff Tom Hawkins stood on the porch, his expression harder than Elena had ever seen it. Behind him, his cruiser's lights painted the morning in alternating blue and red. Elena, I need you to be straight with me. Tom's voice carried the weight of official duty now, not the warmth of old friendship. Are you harboring Ethan Blake? Elena met his gaze without flinching. No, Tom. I told you already. There was no one alive in that wreck. Funny thing. Tom pulled out his notebook. Got a call yesterday from someone at your clinic. Said you've been acting strange. Disappearing for days. Lying about where you've been. He paused. Said they're worried you might be in danger. Or causing it. Marissa. The realization hit Elena like a physical blow. Her friend, her colleague, had betrayed her. People talk, Elena. You know how this town works. Tom's voice softened slightly. If you're protecting someone, if you're in over your head, tell me now. Before this gets worse. There's nothing to tell. After Tom left, Elena found Ethan in the living room, his face ashen. That was your friend from the clinic, wasn't it? The one who betrayed you. Elena nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. We can't stay here. Rosa's voice cut through the silence. They'll come back with warrants. With more questions. Mija, you've crossed a line you can't uncross. Ethan moved to stand in front of Elena, his hands gentle on her shoulders. I have to face Damien. I've been running, hiding, letting him control the narrative. But I can't keep asking you to sacrifice everything for me. Then don't ask. Elena's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you. We go to New York, we face your brother, and we end this. Together. Outside, snow began falling again, covering their tracks, buying them precious time. But Elena knew the walls were closing in. Marissa's betrayal had accelerated everything. The sanctuary of the cabin had become a trap, and the only way forward was through the fire. Rosa pressed a small velvet pouch into Elena's hand. Herbs for strength and protection. Your grandfather gave me something similar when I crossed the border all those years ago. The old woman's eyes glistened. Go, Mija. Fight for what you believe in. I'll hold down the fort here. As they loaded Elena's truck in the pre-dawn darkness, Ethan paused at the door. Thank you, Rosa. For trusting me. For letting Elena make her own choices. I'm not trusting you, boy. Rosa's sharp gaze pinned him in place. I'm trusting her. Don't make me regret it. New York City hit Elena like a wall of sound and light and motion. After weeks in the mountain silence, the urban assault was overwhelming. Car horns, construction noise, the press of humanity on every corner. She gripped the rental car's steering wheel, navigating traffic that seemed to operate by rules she'd never learned. Beside her, Ethan sat rigid, his jaw tight as the gleaming tower of Blake Technologies came into view. 50 stories of glass and steel, a monument to the empire he'd built and lost. We can still turn back, he said quietly. Elena pulled into the parking garage. No, we can't. The lobby was all marble and chrome, intimidatingly corporate. The moment they stepped through the revolving doors, Elena felt every eye turn toward them. Security guards murmured into radios. Someone gasped. Then the cameras started flashing. Reporters materialized from nowhere, a feeding frenzy of microphones and shouted questions. Mr. Blake, where have you been? Is it true you embezzled $50 million? Who's the woman with you? Are you turning yourself in? The questions battered them from all sides. Elena felt herself shrinking, wanting to disappear, but Ethan's hand found hers and squeezed. Security formed a protective corridor, and they pushed through to the elevators. The ride to the 50th floor was silent except for the mechanical hum of ascent. Elena watched the numbers climb, each one bringing them closer to confrontation. She caught her reflection in the polished steel doors, a small-town doctor in sensible clothes, her dark hair pulled back in a practical bun, dark circles under her eyes from too many sleepless nights. She looked exactly like what she was, someone completely out of her depth. "You don't have to come in," Ethan said as the elevator slowed. "I can do this alone." "Not a chance." The boardroom doors opened to reveal a scene carefully staged for Ethan's humiliation. 20 board members sat around a massive conference table, their expressions ranging from hostile to uncomfortable. And at the head of the table, presiding like a king, sat Damian Blake. He looked so much like Ethan it was unsettling. The same sharp features, the same gray eyes. But where Ethan's gaze held warmth and pain, Damian's was cold calculation. He rose as they entered, arms spreading wide in a gesture of welcome that didn't reach his eyes. "Ethan, my God, you're alive." Damian's voice carried perfectly pitched relief and concern. "We've been so worried. When you disappeared after the allegations, well, we feared the worst." "Cut the act, Damian." Ethan's voice was steady, projecting across the room. "Everyone here knows why I disappeared. Because you tried to have me killed." Gasps rippled through the board members. Damian's expression shifted to one of pained sympathy. "Brother, I understand you've been through something traumatic. But these accusations, they're symptoms of extreme stress. Paranoia." He gestured to Elena dismissively. "And who is this? Some woman you picked up while running from your crimes." The words hit Elena like a slap. She felt heat flood her cheeks, the weight of all those eyes judging her, dismissing her. "Her name is Dr. Elena Reyes." Ethan's voice cut through the room like a blade. "She saved my life when your hired men ran me off that mountain road. She protected me when she had every reason to turn me over to authorities. She risked everything, her career, her reputation, her freedom, because she believed in something you've never understood, integrity." The silence that followed was absolute. "This woman," Ethan continued, his hand finding Elena's again, "has more courage, more honor, more genuine strength than every person in this room combined. Including me. Especially me." Elena felt something crack open in her chest. Not the breaking of fear, but the breaking of doubt. She stood taller, meeting the eyes around the table without flinching. Damian's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the fury beneath. How touching. The disgraced criminal and his nurse. "This is what you've become, Ethan? Hiding behind a nobody from nowhere." "I'm Dr. Elena Reyes from Pine Valley, Montana," Elena said, her voice ringing clear despite her pounding heart. "And I know what I saw. I know who pulled strings to have Ethan killed. I know who's really guilty here." The room erupted in murmurs. At the far end of the table, an older woman with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes, Victoria Walsh, Elena remembered from the research they'd done, leaned forward with obvious interest. "Mr. Blake," Victoria said, addressing Ethan, "you've made serious accusations. I hope you have evidence to support them." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm working on gathering." "He has me," Elena interrupted. "I witnessed the aftermath of the assassination attempt. I have medical records of his injuries. And I have something else." She pulled out her phone, navigating to the screenshots she'd taken of Marissa's bank records. "Payment from a shell company to Dr. Marissa Chun, my colleague in Montana. The same shell company that's listed in Blake Technologies' subsidiary filings. Someone paid her to inform on us." The murmurs grew louder. Victoria Walsh's eyes narrowed with interest. Damian laughed, but it sounded forced. Circumstantial at best. The desperate grasping of a man who can't face his own guilt. "Maybe," Ethan conceded. "But I'm not running anymore. I'm here. I'm fighting back. And the truth will come out." The meeting dissolved into chaos. Board members arguing, Damian calling for order, Victoria Walsh making notes with an expression that suggested gears turning. Security eventually cleared the room, but as they left, Elena caught Victoria watching them with calculating interest. In the elevator descending, Elena finally let herself breathe. "That went badly." "No." Ethan turned to her, something like wonder in his eyes. "That went exactly right. We drew a line in the sand. And Victoria Walsh, she's the key. She didn't believe Damian. I could see it." But as they emerged into the lobby and ran the gauntlet of cameras again, Elena saw the headlines already forming on reporters' phones. Disgracio returns with mystery woman. Blake blames brother in bizarre accusation. Montana nurse or accomplice? The court of public opinion was rendering its verdict, and it wasn't in their favor. The hotel room overlooked Central Park, but Elena couldn't appreciate the view. She sat curled in the window seat, her phone in her trembling hands, scrolling through an endless stream of vitriol. At truthseeker_NYC, that doctor is either the dumbest woman alive or she's in on the con. Hashtag Blake trial. At Corporate Watch, nobody from Montana believes this absurd story. She's obviously his accomplice. Hashtag Ethan Blake. At Reality Check 2025, small-town nurse thinks she can play with the big boys. When will these gold diggers learn? Hashtag pathetic. Each comment was a knife. Each headline a wound. Mystery woman defends criminal. Nobody nurses bizarre loyalty. Elena Reyes. Naive hero or knowing accomplice? They'd taken her apart piece by piece. Her credentials questioned. Her intelligence mocked. Her motives dissected and found wanting. Someone had dug up her college photos, posting them side by side with images of Ethan's wealth, creating a narrative of opportunism that felt impossible to combat. Elena's vision blurred with tears she'd refused to shed until now. She'd sacrificed everything. Her reputation, her career, her standing in the community that had been her whole world. And for what? They were no closer to proving Ethan's innocence than they'd been in the cabin. The bathroom door opened, and Ethan emerged, his hair damp from the shower. He took one look at her face and crossed the room in 3 strides. Elena, don't. She held up a hand, her voice breaking. Just don't. But he was already kneeling in front of her, his hands gentle on her knees. What happened? She thrust her phone at him, unable to speak. He scrolled for a moment, his jaw tightening with each swipe. Then he set the phone aside, his gray eyes devastated. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Elena's laugh was bitter, edged with hysteria. You're sorry? I gave up everything for you, Ethan. Everything. My patience, my home, my friend. Her voice cracked. Marissa betrayed me. The town thinks I'm either insane or corrupt. And now the entire country has decided I'm some pathetic nobody who got played by a criminal. You're not. Maybe I am. The words exploded from her, raw and honest. Maybe I was a fool. Maybe I should have left you in that fire and driven away. Maybe I should have turned you into Sheriff Hawkins. Maybe everyone is right, and I'm just too stupid to see it. Ethan flinched as if she'd struck him. You don't mean that. Don't I? Elena stood abruptly, pacing the expensive hotel room that felt like a cage. What did I think would happen? That we'd waltz into that boardroom and everyone would just believe us? That love and loyalty and faith would be enough. She turned to face him, tears streaming down her face. I'm a small-town doctor, Ethan. I deliver babies and set broken bones and prescribe antibiotics. I don't belong in your world. I never did. Elena, please. I can't do this anymore. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. I can't watch them destroy me while you're still no closer to clearing your name. I can't keep sacrificing myself for a battle we might never win. Ethan stood slowly, his face pale. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe it's time I saved myself. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan looked at her with such raw pain that she almost took the words back. Almost. If that's what you need to do, he said finally, his voice hoarse, then do it. I won't stop you. I never should have let you risk so much in the first place. Elena nodded, unable to trust her voice. She retreated to the bedroom, mechanically packing the few belongings she'd brought. Her hands moved automatically, folding clothes, zipping bags, while her mind screamed that she was making a mistake. But she couldn't stop. The weight of public judgment, of betrayal, of exhaustion, it was crushing her. And she was terrified that if she stayed, there would be nothing left of Elena Reyes to salvage. At 4 a.m., while Ethan slept fitfully on the couch, Elena slipped out of the hotel room. The doorman called her a cab without question. The city was just beginning to wake, delivery trucks rumbling past, early commuters stumbling towards subway stations. Elena gave the driver an address she'd found online. A cheap motel in Queens, far from the towers of Manhattan, far from Ethan, far from the wreckage of everything she'd tried to build. Back in the hotel, Ethan woke to find her gone. The note she'd left was brief. I'm sorry. I can't be strong enough for both of us. He sat on the edge of the couch, the paper trembling in his hands, and felt something inside him shatter. Not the clean break of betrayal like Damien had inflicted, but the slow, aching fracture of losing someone who'd chosen to save him twice, and now couldn't save herself from the consequences. His phone buzzed. A message from Damien's lawyers, settlement papers. Sign away his claims, disappear quietly, keep a fraction of his wealth. The easy way out. Ethan stared at the message for a long time. Without Elena, what was he even fighting for? The company seemed meaningless. Vindication felt hollow. Everything he'd thought mattered had evaporated the moment she walked out that door. He picked up a pen, pulled up the digital documents, and stared at the signature line. For the first time since this nightmare began, surrender seemed like mercy. Elena sat in a diner that smelled of grease and burnt coffee, watching the sun rise over a city that had chewed her up and spit her out. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. Her phone sat on the chipped formica table, silent. Then it rang. Rosa's name lit up the screen. Abuela, Elena answered, her voice raw from crying. Mija. Rosa's voice was sharp, cutting through Elena's despair like a blade. What are you doing? I can't do this anymore. Everyone hates me. They think I'm a fool or a criminal or... And when did you start caring what everyone thinks? Rosa's words carried the weight of lived wisdom. When did my granddaughter, who became a doctor against all odds, who chose to serve her community over money, who pulled a dying man from fire, when did she become afraid of cowards and liars? Elena's breath hitched. It's too much. Life is too much, Mija. That's the point. You think I didn't want to run when I crossed the border? When I was alone and pregnant, and everyone said I'd fail? When your grandfather died and left me with 2 children? When your parents... Rosa's voice cracked. When your parents died and suddenly I had a 12-year-old to raise all over again. That's different. It's not different. It's the same choice over and over. Do you run from pain, or do you run toward what matters? A pause. You saved that man for a reason, Elena. Are you going to let them tell you that reason was wrong? The words settled into Elena's chest, heavy and true. She closed her eyes, remembering the night on the mountain, the fire, the choice, the absolute certainty that she couldn't drive away. That certainty hadn't changed. Only her fear had grown louder. Thank you, Abuela, she whispered. After hanging up, Elena sat for another moment, then opened her laptop. If she was going back into the fire, she needed ammunition. She started digging into Marissa's finances, using her medical credentials to access healthcare databases, following the trail of that suspicious payment. 3 hours later, she had it. A shell company called Pinnacle Holdings LLC, registered in Delaware, with a paper trail leading directly back to Blake Technologies. The payment to Marissa wasn't an isolated incident. There were others. Board members, journalists, all receiving money from the same source. Elena's hands shook as she compiled screenshots, creating an evidence file. This was it. Proof of Damien's conspiracy. Her phone rang again. This time, a number she didn't recognize. Dr. Reyes? This is Victoria Walsh. We met at the board meeting. The older woman's voice was crisp, businesslike. I've been doing my own investigation into the embezzlement charges. There are inconsistencies, things that don't add up. If you and Ethan have any evidence, now would be the time to share it. Elena's heart began to pound. I have something. Financial records showing payments to people who informed on us. All from a Blake Technologies subsidiary. Send them to me. Immediately. Victoria rattled off an encrypted email address. This could be what we need to reopen the board's investigation. After the call, Elena stared at her phone. She could send the evidence to Victoria and disappear. Let Ethan fight his battle without her. It would be the safe choice. But safety had never been her goal. Truth had. Justice had. And love. The terrifying, consuming kind that made you run into burning buildings. She was searching for the hotel address when Rosa called again, her voice tight with fear. Elena, I just got a call from a friend in New York. She saw something on the news. They're saying Ethan Blake was spotted entering a warehouse by the docks. The abandoned district. Rosa's breath was shaky. Mija, I think it's a trap. Damien's people, they're going to finish what they started. Elena was already moving, throwing money on the table, running for the street. Send me the address. The cab ride took 20 agonizing minutes. Elena watched the buildings blur past, her medical bag clutched in her lap, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd walked away from Ethan once. She wouldn't do it again. The warehouse loomed against the gray sky, its windows shattered, walls covered in graffiti. Elena paid the cab driver and approached cautiously, every instinct screaming danger. Inside, the vast space was dim, lit only by dusty light filtering through holes in the roof. And there, in the center of the concrete floor, she saw him. Ethan was tied to a chair, his face bloodied, his shirt torn. Standing over him, holding a lit match near a barrel that reeked of gasoline, was Damian Blake. "You really are pathetic, brother," Damian was saying, his voice echoing in the empty space. "You could have just signed the papers. Disappeared. But no, you had to keep fighting. Keep believing someone would care about your sob story." "They will," Ethan said, his voice hoarse but defiant. "The truth always comes out. Not if there's no one left to tell it." Damian's smile was cold. An accident. A tragic end to a desperate man on the run. That's how the story ends. Elena's mind raced. She couldn't fight Damian. He was bigger, stronger. But she could create a distraction. She grabbed a rusted metal pipe from the floor and hurled it across the warehouse. It clanged against a far wall, echoes bouncing through the space. Damian spun toward the sound, and Elena ran. She reached Ethan, her fingers fumbling with the ropes. "I've got you. I've got you, Elena." Ethan's eyes widened with shock and fear. "You shouldn't be here. Shut up and help me get you free." But Damian had recovered, spinning back toward them with fury distorting his features. "You? The little doctor who thinks she's a hero." He advanced, the burning match still in his hand. "Perfect. You can burn together. A love story for the ages." He dropped the match. Fire erupted instantly, racing across gasoline-soaked floors. Flames roared upward, consuming wooden support beams. Smoke billowed thick and black. Elena finally freed the last rope, and Ethan staggered to his feet, clutching his ribs. They ran for the exit, but a burning beam crashed down, blocking their path. Heat seared Elena's skin. Smoke filled her lungs. She was back on the mountain road, back in that first moment of choice. Run toward safety or run toward the fire. There, Ethan pointed through the smoke. Elena half-carried him toward the side door, the warehouse trembling behind them. Near the exit, she spotted Damian's phone on a table and grabbed it before they stumbled outside. The building collapsed in a roar of flame. They lay coughing on the gravel as sirens approached. Ethan turned to her, disbelief in his eyes. "You came back." "I never really left," she rasped. "My heart was always here, with you." Damian's phone proved everything. Investigators uncovered texts ordering Ethan's assassination, emails falsifying records, recordings of bribes, and evidence of a vast conspiracy. By morning, Damian Blake was arrested. Headlines screamed of betrayal, corruption, and redemption. The media hailed Elena as the brave doctor who exposed the truth, and Ethan as the wrongly accused visionary. 3 days later, the board reconvened. This time, Elena and Ethan sat as victors. Victoria Walsh presented the evidence with clinical precision, then faced Ethan. "Mr. Blake, on behalf of this board, we apologize. We'd like to reinstate you as CEO." Ethan was silent, then took Elena's hand. "I've learned there are things more important than empires," he said softly. "Community, connection, purpose." He turned to Victoria. "You should lead. I'll stay on as chairman." The vote was unanimous. Outside, the cameras flashed, but now the questions were kind. That night, Ethan pulled Elena close. "Thank you for believing in me, for coming back. I couldn't let you burn alone," she whispered. In the weeks that followed, Damian's allies fell. Marissa Chun lost her license. Ethan's name was cleared, though fame made him restless. One morning, he said quietly, "I want to go home." To Montana. 3 months later, they stood at the opening of the Margaret Rosa Reyes Community Health Center, blending modern medicine with Rosa's traditional healing. The whole town came. Sheriff Hawkins apologized, old friends embraced her, and Rosa smiled proudly. "You did good, Mija. Your parents would be proud." "They can see," Rosa said firmly. "They're smiling." At sunset, Ethan led Elena to the ridge overlooking the valley. He took her hands. "Elena Reyes, you pulled me from fire and taught me what love means." He knelt, opening a small box. "Marry me, not for what I can give, but because we're stronger together. Because I love you." "Yes," she whispered, tears shining. 6 months later, they married in the meadow near the cabin where Ethan had healed. Surrounded by laughter and music, they exchanged vows written from the ashes of everything they'd survived. "I promise to run toward you, not away," Elena said. "I promise to be worthy of your faith," Ethan replied. As they kissed beneath the lights, Rosa raised her glass. "I usually am right, Mija," she teased, smiling. Later, standing beneath the stars, Ethan asked softly, "No regrets?" Elena looked out over the valley, their home, their purpose, their victory. Not a single one. Some fires destroy, she thought. Others forge. And together, they had been forged by flame, stronger, united, and finally at peace. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.